The story begins in Manhattan, New York, USA. A notification came announcing the start of the demotion prevention. The players quickly looked up at the sky. Their primary mission was defense. The sky turned red, and something terrifying ripped the fabric of space. A massive monster emerged, and with a single stomp, it created chaos everywhere. The players felt the immense pressure from the creature. The monster before humanity was known as the Behemoth. To survive, they had to defeat it. The monster roared at the players. This was enough to make them tremble, but they knew they couldn't surrender. They kept their formation and bravely advanced towards the gigantic being. If they failed this mission, the world would end. The tragedy had started back in 2010 when BattleNet began. It was a competition between countries at first, but it all changed when the Space League opened in 2022. The competition turned into a fight for survival against creatures from space. Humanity continued to lose, and by 2023, only 10 nations remained on Earth. The Behemoth attacking was one of the player representatives from other planets. Against its powerful attacks, humanity barely survived. Most were wiped out until a mysterious man appeared. He looked at the Behemoth with contempt. The monster noticed him and launched a powerful attack. The man charged in, deflecting the attack with his left arm. He let out a powerful punch towards the Behemoth. The punch created massive cracks everywhere. The other players braced for the impact. One of them opened his eyes and couldn't believe what he saw. The mysterious man had single-handedly defeated the Behemoth. This meant that the USA division had completed its mission. The man was Seong Jihan, ranked 7th among players worldwide and our main protagonist. A voice was heard from the top of a building. Baron Williams, the #1 ranked player on Earth and guild master of our protagonist's guild, was hailing their victory and praising their mighty country. As he gave his speech, a woman, a priestess, was about to approach Jihan. Some players tried to stop her, but Baron let her go. He had something on his mind, amazed by the Behemoth's power. The woman approached Jihan and saw his injured arm. She quickly cast a healing spell on our protagonist, warning him that it might hurt due to the Behemoth's evil energy. Jihan endured the pain. Before his arm could heal completely, a golden light emerged in front of him, a chest. It was a reward for defeating the boss monster. Jihan and Sophia, the priestess, heard Baron telling them to step back. He announced that he would manage the reward. Some players were upset as he took credit for killing the monster. However, being the strongest, they couldn't challenge him. Baron addressed the American First Guild and began to distribute the rewards. All Sophia and Jihan could do was watch and hope to hear their names. Only the top 5 players received rewards, leaving our protagonist empty-handed. The priestess tried to protest because this was unfair. Jihan was the one who defeated the boss, but Baron stood on his word. He had a reason why he didn't give Jihan something. It's because our main character was not an American citizen. He had been naturalized, but they still didn't consider him as one of them. Jihan was their useful dog. Sophia tried to counter, but Jihan told her to let them be. This guy doesn't really care about it that much, and on top of that, Baron was right. Jihan was a refugee who ran away after his country was destroyed. Right at that moment, our main character obtained a SSS rank skill. It was called Nameless Divine Arts. This was a power he used to climb up to the 7th place in the world ranking. And since he was not really an American, he experienced all kinds of discrimination. But that really didn't bother him that much. The thing that still bothered him was the guilt of surviving alone in this world. He was the only Korean left, and he was too powerless back then. Jihan then proceeded to heal himself. The mission results were about to be concluded, and after a few seconds, a notification appeared and informed all the players about the results of the Bronze League demotion mission. The defense mission was the same for all the remaining countries on Earth. The USA successfully passed and survived. China also succeeded, but Russia failed. This was the same for Japan and the other nations. It meant that only 2 among the 10 countries survived this defense mission. With this, humanity has lost the demotion prevention. War notifications then appeared. It informed everyone that they would have to face the other species that also lost this mission. Their next opponent will be the orcs. Humans panicked as they found out about this. Sophia then informs Baron that they need Jihan in this final battle because he was the only one who won against them. But this stubborn Baron held on to his pride and told everyone that they will go without him. It was now the time to summon the players from each planet. Baron and 4 more other players appeared in this stage. He then greeted their opponents. This guy even branded these orcs as disgusting pigs. He checked his team, and it consisted of the top 4 players in his guild and 1 Chinese ranker. Baron then gripped his fist. He thought that they really didn't need Jihan for this one. He summoned all of his strength and claimed that he would deal with this fight on his own. The ranked 1 player started to elevate and emitted a powerful aura. He then charged towards the group of orcs. This one was really determined to win the final battle. But in a swift moment, a huge orc passed by him and did the impossible. The other rankers that were with Baron were shocked. The players who were also watching this broadcast saw this event. Jihan was also included. The head of the strongest player on Earth fell down on the ground. A notification then confirmed that Baron had died. This made the entire human race feel hopeless, and one by one, the other players also fell to the same fate. These orcs were just much more powerful than the most powerful players of Earth. The last one alive was a priestess, but she also couldn't win this fight. Before executing its last attack, this orc thanked humanity for being weak. With that, the game was concluded. Humanity lost and will be demoted from the Bronze League. But since there were no leagues below this one, they were deemed worthless. This only meant that humanity will now be expelled from the Space League. A black aura then appeared on Earth. This one suddenly grew a lot bigger and it started to suck everything in its way. Our main character also couldn't do anything about it as he got sucked in by this dark aura. He thought that it was really the end of the world. The dark aura grew and turned into a mini black hole. It was destroying the planet in mere seconds. No one had the power to survive this kind of disaster. The notification then appeared and it confirmed the total deletion of humanity. But then an error occurred. A single human managed to survive. Jihan saw this and realized that his S rank skill called Nameless Divine Arts was resisting this fate. This guy had no idea what was really happening. Our main character then started to think about things he could have done differently. He wondered if this nameless divine skill could save everyone if he was just stronger. A series of notifications then popped out. It seemed like it was a conversation. One of the messages asked if they would give him another chance. Turns out, these messages were from these mysterious beings. They seemed to be observing what was happening. All of them agreed to give Jihan another chance. He was returned to the League's first entry era. Jihan's surroundings then shattered. The darkness he saw was starting to fade. After that, our main character woke up from the sound of his television. His head was still aching from his hangover. Jihan was still confused. The last thing he remembered was that the Earth was deleted. It took him a few minutes before he realized where he was. This man was starting to catch up. He then went in front of his window and checked his surroundings to confirm his theory. This was South Korea way back in the year 2020. Jihan saw these kids who were imitating the Sword King named Yoon. The people around them were also talking about playing a game. His eyes brightened up as our main character realized that he was back. He then immediately checked his status window. Right now, he was at level 2. This was the same time when he entered his first league. Jihan smiled as he thought of something. He knew that he was given a new opportunity, and because he still had the knowledge from his previous life, it would really be an advantage for him. This guy was determined to change the future. Our main character looked at a family portrait in front of him and thought that he would save everyone this time. This guy was the only human who saw the end game, and right now he was back to change the fate of humanity. In the year 2020, South Korea had a strong standing among the world's rankers. The top players at that time considered 11 players to be the best, and a certain individual held the third place. This person was able to defeat multiple rankers in a single strike. He was the man who wielded dual swords. This man, known as the Sword King, was Yoon Sejin. He was the reason why South Korea remained at the top. He was hailed as the treasure of Korea and the strongest warrior in the world. This was his title until something happened in July 2020. Yoon Sejin announced that he changed his nationality and became a Japanese citizen. This was the same day when our protagonist regressed back, causing the greatest shock to Korea. Even now, Jihan, our protagonist, felt irritated when he saw Sejin's face. This man was the reason Korea fell into chaos. News outlets were reporting this development, and people in Korea were worried about their status in the leagues. Jihan knew that since the strongest border of Korea had left, they were now in shambles. Some reporters remained positive, thinking that they still had many powerful rankers and things would be fine. But that mindset led to their country's failure. No one replaced the pillar that Yoon Sejin left. Jihan thought that Korea would have been okay if they had more time. But that was not the case due to the brutal BattleNet. BattleNet started as a game, but everything changed when the Space League came into play. In just 2 years, this game turned into a survival of the fittest. If a player loses their life in this game, they also die in real life. Monsters started appearing in lower-ranked countries, leading to a one-sided disaster. Since Korea fell badly in the rankings, they faced the same fate. The country was destroyed. Survivors thought that if Yoon Sejin had stayed in Korea, things would have been different. That's how this man affected their nation. The Sword King happened to be Jihan's brother-in-law. Furious with Sejin, Jihan destroyed his portrait. He wondered how his sister fell in love with this man and thought that things would have been different if she were alive. Jihan decided to face reality. He realized that his current stats were too weak. He wasn't surprised because all he used to do was gamble and drink. He realized that he was foolish in the past and did not understand the true power of his gift. Everyone becomes a player at 18 in this world, but only a few receive gifts. Jihan's gift was an F rank, which he used on various things, including predicting matches. He was embarrassed because he didn't know any better. The true power of his gift was only revealed when it awakened. Among his low stats, one thing puzzled him. He wondered how he leveled up to level 2. Jihan was disappointed as he remembered how he got to this point. He found an experience potion among his alcoholic drinks and might have drunk it while intoxicated. He noticed that he got 100,000 achievement points and wondered where they came from. These points were deemed useless as they weren't worth any money, but it still puzzled him. Checking his inventory, he was shocked to find an achievement points exchange coupon. This was a reward for being the last survivor of the last challenge. He figured that this was just for him and decided to use the coupon. The system informed him that he had unlocked an achievement store, but he wasn't satisfied with the current choices and decided to upgrade the store. Despite reaching level 3, there were no useful items. Each upgrade cost more points, with the next one costing 40,000 points. Jihan had two options, either gamble or buy all available items. Being a gambler, he chose to upgrade the store. He got an option called Urgent Restoration, which allows him to repair any faulty item to a perfect state. Entering Yoon Sejin's game room with his fingerprint, he smiled because the security allowed him inside even though the owner was no longer there. He opened the inventory of the BattleNet connector. The item he was after was Dom Fengshu's spoiled brush. This wasn't a rank item but not useful because it was broken. Our main character then used his newest power, named Urgent Restoration. This power quickly worked on an object and, after a few seconds, the fix was done. He grinned, reaching for the item. Dongfang's shoe brush had turned into a double S rank object when it got fixed. It held a link to the martial god. The object reacted when Jihan picked it up. A message then shook him, saying the Bronze League's teaching part would start. Jihan knew he didn't have a lot of time. He quickly opened his status window. Using the brush, he tweaked his stats. He remembered this was why he had become the 7th best player in the world and had earned the title of Martial Saint. Our main character was now blending his basic stats into a special stat. He kept using this strange brush to get back the martial power he had before. This broken item was also why he had become awake, and he was doing the same thing again now. His base 6 stats started to blend into one, but he was running out of time. These stats became unclear at the last moment, right when the timer hit 0. Our main character was put into the BattleNet League. This time, his main task was to stay alive. He had to live in the Coliseum with 100 other players and monsters. The game would end when half the players were gone. Jihan didn't have any more time to get ready. He was moved to the game with players who were much higher in level than him. He was also scared because he still didn't know if his awakening was done. But when our main character checked his status window, he saw that his stats had become 1. He had done it. This was his current status window. Since he had this special stat, the system gave him 10,000 points for achieving things. Jihan grinned because he was happy to feel this familiar feeling again. This special stat would help him get the Nameless Divine Art back. He also knew that the Bronze League would now be easier. The system also told Jihan that he had logged in without a battle connector. This meant he would feel all the pain in the game. Our main character sighed, remembering this feature. It felt like a pay-to-win kind of thing. People with money could lessen the pain they felt in the game. The only person he knew who had lessened the pain to 99% was Yoon Sejin. This was because he had all the latest tech. Jihan thought he would use this connector later when he got access to Sejin's room. The system gave our main character a limited task. All he needed to do is achieve number 1 in the tutorial. The prize would be 1,000 points for achieving things. He grinned, knowing that there was nothing like this before. This would be easy now that he had the martial power. Not long after, the game started. But just as all the players were told this, a player popped up behind our main character and tried to hit him. This player laughed, saying goodbye to the newbie, but then his face changed when he saw something. His weapon was stopped by 2 fingers. Jihan remembered the feeling that made this game fun. That was the feeling of killing other players. In this game, guilds also exist. These were groups that trained and managed players. Everyone around the world was excited about Battle.net, so they focused their resources on supporting players. This was also true for South Korea. Aggressive investments from well-known companies were made. They were able to set up large guilds quickly. This allowed them to train strong players early on. Right now, the Bronze League, which our main character was sent into, was one of the guild's areas for scouting potential players. A few moments before the game began, this guy checked the other players. He thought that the Gangnam League was on a higher level, but he couldn't let his nervousness get the best of him. This man was Do Hyukjiu. He thought he was luckier than anyone else in this arena. He cheered himself on as he remembered that he was with a divergent guild. This guild was managed by the Divergent Group. They were known to manage many rising star players. On top of that, Do Hyukju received a high-ranking gift called Agility. It gave him a plus 25 stat on his agility. He was starting to gain back his confidence. He thought that only a small number of players could receive such a high-ranked gift. He then scanned the players to look for potential opponents. The players around him became nervous as soon as they noticed his presence. Do Hyukju chuckled when he saw there were not many players that could defeat him. The main goal of this mission was to survive, so he was off to a good start. However, Du Hyukju also noticed some players from the large guilds. These players had high-ranked items. Then, he saw something strange. He saw our main character. He thought that maybe this person got summoned by mistake because he had no equipment with him. Du Hyukju couldn't believe what he was seeing. But then he realized that this was a great chance. He got ready, thinking that this was an easy kill. Du Hyukju thanked our main character in his mind for appearing in front of him. He thought he was very lucky. As soon as the game started, he rushed towards Jihan. That's when he found out he messed with the wrong player. Du Hyukju was now wondering how this guy managed to stop his attack with only 2 fingers. His opponent also kept up with his speed. Our main character then let go of the sword, causing Du Hyukju to stumble. He then praised Du Hyukju for his confidence in participating in the Bronze League even with that kind of gift. Du Hyukju got angry when he heard his gift being mocked, but Jihan continued to look at him with pity. This made him even angrier and he started to get serious. Du Hyukju was about to give it his all. Jihan knew what his opponent was planning. He thought he was still faster than Du Hyukju, but he was caught off guard when his opponent appeared in front of him with a swift move. Our main character managed to dodge this attack. The new player then continued to strike Jihan, but his efforts were all in vain. While he was busy dodging, he figured out that he was having a hard time adjusting with this lower stat body. Du Hyukju was not fast, but his current self was too slow. Luckily, the path of Du Hyukju's attacks was simple and obvious. He could see all of this guy's movements. Du Hyukju's last strike proved to be useless as he was slapped by our main character. Just with this simple slap, his hands were shaking. Jihan then used this chance to grab the sword that Du Hyukju dropped. Before the newbie could react, he was already finished. The pain will be felt by his main body 100%. Our main character has defeated this player with just one quick strike. Du Hyukju then promised that he'll get his revenge the next time he faces Jihan. This guy then sighed with this statement. These were good times when people would be revived after being killed in battle.net. The system then gave our main character 100 achievement points for getting the very first kill in this mission. His weapon disappeared because it was from the player he defeated. Jihan then checked his surroundings. He needed to find his next opponent to secure his standings in this league. And as expected, no one had gone towards the monsters. This was natural because each monster could only equate to 0.1 points. Most people would avoid them. Even our main character knew that it was not really worth it to fight these ones. But something changed in his mind. A quest that required him to defeat all the orcs appeared. This one offers 500 points. That gave him enough reason to face these monsters. Jihan smiled because these ones were nothing like the real orcs that he faced in his previous life. His cheerful expression then changed as he started to go towards the orcs. His martial power allowed him to get this early speed boost. The orcs saw his fast movements and started to panic. A single human was now charging towards a mob of orcs. They thought that he was crazy, and since it was only one human, they charged at him without fear. 2 axes were then thrown towards our main character, but he easily caught them. He then showed the orcs the proper way to throw these weapons. One strike from this human made them scared. But Jihan was not done yet. He proceeded to defeat them one by one. One swing with his axe and their heads were flying. Our main character also placed himself in the middle of the orcs. This was a perfect position to defeat them faster. Watching all this, the orcs tried to kill Jihan, but he already knew how they attacked and easily blocked each try. Besides that, he also lowered their numbers. One orc used a spear, but it broke. This gave Jihan enough time to fight back. He was also annoyed because the orcs were too loud. Jihan told them to bring better weapons next time because their current ones were weak. The orcs saw Jihan's weapon break, which made them all alert. They rushed him, but this annoyed Jihan even more. He stomped his foot, making a small hole in the ground. The force was enough to make the monsters lose their balance. This was a great chance to end this quest. Jihan went on to attack these monsters with his sword. The orcs were too weak to keep up with his speed. More and more were defeated. Jihan was even using 2 weapons now. He was used to them. He threw the spear at the monsters and it was strong enough to go right through. The last orc thought that their enemy was not a human. Jihan was seen as a monster. With that last sword attack, the quest was done. This gave Jihan 500 more points. He also leveled up mid-game. This was odd because experience points are usually counted at the end of the game. Jihan didn't think much about it since it was not a bad thing. He checked his status window to find a skill to spend his points on. The one that was most likely to be noticed was martial power. This skill was a mix of strength, speed, and stamina. This skill doubles the effect of the basic ones. Once he reached 30 skill points in this martial power, Jihan could get access to the unnamed divine arts again. Jihan tried giving the level point to the martial power and it worked. This confused Jihan because one could not increase this skill this easily. Before, he had to be a good warrior before he could increase this skill. Battle experience and training were needed. He smiled because for some reason, this would make his progress even faster. But his thoughts were interrupted as an archer shot an arrow at him. Jihan dodged this with ease. The arrow was from 2 players. They were amazed at how Jihan managed to dodge his death. The two decided to end this battle quickly. Jihan thought that maybe these two teamed up. This map was meant to be a PvP style, but players were still allowed to form teams. These two were from the Turtle Guild, one of the top 10 guilds in Korea. The system told all the players that there were only 60 players left. This game was about to end. Jihan then thought that if he just dodged these attacks, he would surely survive this game. But he saw these two ignoring him. The warrior even tried to flirt with the archer. Jihan checked the scoreboard. Right now, he has 4 kills. He still had the top spot, but this was not enough to keep this position. Since he wanted to make sure that he gets the top spot, Jihan thought of something. This archer tried to load her bow with an arrow while making fun of Jihan. But her attempt failed because she got hit. Jihan eliminated this archer instantly. The warrior was then left alone. He quickly turned his attention to Jihan. He was shaking with fear and anger as his crush was killed easily. Jihan didn't waste any more time and went to him. He struck his sword against the guy's armor. But since this guy had the support of a top guild, his equipment was stronger than normal ones. He even bragged about it and told Jihan that he will never break through his armor. But this proved to be wrong as Jihan hit the same spot many times. This made a crack that finally broke the warrior's armor. Jihan was kind of annoyed because these players still managed to flirt. They didn't know what was about to happen. A loud scream was then heard in the Colosseum. Meanwhile, 2 people were just staring at their screen. They were watching a recording of the game. This lady was surprised at what she saw. She was Lee Haeun, the 3rd Division head of the Divergent Guild. She was talking with her bodyguard, Lim Gaeung. She told her that she was happy because Gam didn't face the strange player. The final scoreboard showed that Jihan got 6 kills and Gaeung got 4. This annoyed Gam because her boss thought that if she faced Jihan, she would have lost. But Haeun took her statement back and told her bodyguard that she could easily beat Jihan. These two also planned to fight Jihan so they could learn more about him and how he fights. Gaeung continued to watch how Jihan beat those high-level players from the Turtle Guild. As she was watching, she thought that this man looked familiar. Lim Gaeong was a talent from the Divergent Guild. She had a powerful talent that went beyond normal players. She was also known for having an S-rank gift. She ranked among the top players of Divergent. Her performance in the last Bronze League met everyone's expectations. Many thought she would take 1st place, but that changed when our MC appeared and claimed the top spot. The scout from the Turtle Guild couldn't believe this development, as their representatives were eliminated. Everyone's attention shifted to this mysterious level 2 player who ranked 1st in the scoreboard. They now wondered about the real identity of this player. Meanwhile, in a tall building, our main character was checking the scoreboard to confirm his ranking. He gained a 50% boost in experience from getting the top spot. His level also rose to level 6. Jihan was delighted because he gained many levels. He was enjoying being a beginner player. With all the points he got from leveling up, he put them all into martial power. This increased its stat from 6 to 9. He also earned a new nickname, Tutorial Conqueror. This gave him an extra point to all attributes and a 20% more experience boost in the Bronze League. Although this would only benefit him in the early game, he was still glad to have this boost. His current status showed 10 martial power points, enough to dominate the Bronze League. The requirement to progress to the Silver League was that the players should be level 25 and above. While scanning his status window, Jihan noticed that he now had the chance for class advancement. This perk was given when players reached level 5. This class advancement was a crucial phase in a player's journey. The classes included Archer, Mage, Support, and Warrior. In his previous life, our main character chose Warrior as he had already gone through that class. This gave him a greater advantage to master more of it. But he knew he could also get another class by buying it in the achievement store. He thought this was a game-changing opportunity. He could learn 2 classes now, as he could easily add the warrior class in the future. Our main character was eager to choose the other ones. After a while, the next mission started. The system welcomed all the players to the Bronze League of the Gangnam area. The theme of the mission was defense. Players were summoned to the top of these towers. They had 2 goals, protect the crystal and survive amidst all the zombies. One player was already summoned into the game. It was none other than Lim Gaeung, a woman with the warrior class. She thought that even inside the game, these zombies still looked scary. 2 bright lights then appeared behind her, summoning 2 more players. These 2 started to gather information about their mission. Gaeung quickly checked her teammates for this mission. The archer was from the LK group and had B-grade gear. The mage didn't belong to any particular guild, but his equipment was quite impressive. However, she was still waiting for the final player, the one that would do the most work for this map. A bright light appeared, signaling the arrival of the support player. This map would be a long fight, so the support's assistance would be critical. But Gaeon noticed something confusing. The one from the support class was none other than our main character, Seong Jihan. This man was quite thrilled when he saw the map setting. 20 minutes ago, the system kept asking our MC if he was sure about his decision to choose the support class. This was because this class didn't suit his skills and stats. But Jihan still confirmed this decision, and his class advancement went well. The main reason he chose this class was the divine power that came with it. He needed this to strengthen another unique stat in the future. The only downside about this divine power was that it was hard to level up. Players couldn't increase this one just by training. The only way was to invest points in it. But our main character wouldn't do it this way. He would still put his points into martial power, as his goal was to get the Nameless Divine Arts again. Luckily, this guy knew another way to increase his divine powers. Back to the current situation, Gaeung couldn't believe that Jihan chose to be a support class player. The mage on their team began to talk nonsense when he saw our main character's equipment. He even called Jihan poor. He thought Jihan was one of the clumsy players. But our main character didn't react to his words and stayed silent. The archer tried to stop the mage from mocking their support, but he continued talking. Gaeung just stood there while observing her teammates. She was annoyed because they were too loud, but something caught her attention. All of a sudden, Jihan grabbed the mage and effortlessly lifted him off the ground. The mage kept threatening our main character with his words, but he fell silent as soon as he realized his situation. Our main character threw him into the sea of zombies. The mage couldn't do anything but scream in fear as he fell. Gaeon and the archer were shocked. Jihan then made a statement. If the mage didn't want to play the game, that was fine because they could still do well without him. After the incident, the mage started to be polite to our main character. This mage, named Kim Joo-hyuk, now asked for Jihan's forgiveness. His sudden change in behavior came from a mechanic in the BattleNet. In this defense game, each player had 3 lives. Kim Joo-hyuk's first life was taken when Jihan threw him at the zombies. When he came back to life, Jihan threw him again. Now, the mage only had 1 life left. He tried hard to get on Jihan's good side. If he died again, he would be last in the score and his level would drop a lot. All the money he used on his skills and equipment would be wasted because they would disappear. Our main character thought the mage might attack him again like he did when he came back to life the second time. Jihan even praised the fire magic that Kim Joo-hyuk used. When Kim Joo-hyuk heard this, he felt better. He thought his fire could keep the zombies away. He gained more confidence and boasted about being level 15. Gaeung watched them and figured out she knew this mage. Kim Joo-hyuk used to be in one of the top guilds. He was respected, but his reputation went down because he was too proud and kept making the same mistakes. Jihan was ready to work with Kim Joo-hyuk for the mission, but then Kim Joo-hyuk went too far. He told Jihan to say sorry for what he did. The archer thought this was normal so their team could get along. But that was not what happened. The mage made Jihan mad. Jihan grabbed him again, something Kim Joo-hyuk didn't see coming. Our main character was happy that Kim Joo-hyuk really wanted him to say sorry. Kim Joo-hyuk tried to beg his way out, but it was too late. Jihan threw him up again and got his bat ready. He told Kim Joo-hyuk he wouldn't say sorry because people might think he started the fight. Like a baseball, the bat hit Kim Joo-hyuk and he fell again. The system confirmed that their mage was dead. Gaeung and the archer couldn't believe it. While they were shocked, the zombies started to climb up. The other players were having fun because their mage could throw fireballs at the zombies. But for Gaeung, Jihan, and the archer, things weren't good. The archer thought they needed the mage and told Jihan things would be better if he wasn't so proud. But Jihan didn't listen. He looked at his status and saw an interesting mission. He would get points if he killed 1,000 zombies by himself. Even with his experience and skills, he thought this was impossible because of the time limit. But he still didn't want to miss out on the points. While he thought of ways to complete the mission, Gaeung was still shocked by his actions. She thought he was a troll player because of how he acted. She couldn't believe he chose the support class even though he was so strong. Gaeung thought there was no reason for the Divergent Guild to want him. Meanwhile, the archer had had enough because Jihan ignored him. He told Jihan to fight the zombies alone. This gave Jihan a great idea. Instead of being scared, he was excited. He thought he could finish the mission by solving this problem. But then Gaeung came up to him. She said she would fight at the front and Jihan and the archer could stay behind. She was ready to do this for the game. But Jihan's answer surprised her. He said he would fight at the front and told her to protect the archer. Soon, the zombies reached the tower. One of them looked different from the others. The archer said it was a blood zombie. Normal attacks wouldn't work on it because its head was made of liquid. The zombie jumped at Jihan, but he killed it with a strong attack. Gaeung and the archer were shocked again. They couldn't believe a support character like Jihan could kill a blood zombie in one shot. Jihan started using his divine powers. The zombies kept coming and he kept hitting them with powerful attacks. Each attack was done with precision. Jihan didn't know if he could complete the mission, but he would still try. So far, he had killed 6 zombies out of 1,000. As Jihan kept fighting the zombies, the number he defeated continued to rise. After a few minutes, he had already managed to kill 26 of them. The only thing preventing him from defeating them all at once was the blood zombies. He needed to use divine powers to defeat them. Jihan then decided to defeat all these zombies at once. Meanwhile, the other two were in awe, watching their supporter carry them through this mission. The archer was surrounded by a bright aura. He believed Jihan was a professional. The woman felt the same way. The level of control was extremely impressive. Gaeung noticed that Jihan was hitting the heads of the zombies while they were just watching. He had already defeated 210 zombies and was getting closer to his goal. Jihan also started to be surrounded by divine powers. He increased this power by 1 point. He was pleased because another method he knew of increasing divine powers worked. Divine items were a type of equipment that appeared all over the earth. They were considered sacred objects. In 2010, these items were sold at high prices because players thought they had some secrets. However, 10 years later, no one managed to find these secrets. As a result, their prices fell continuously and they were considered useless. Many current players didn't even know about their existence. But Jihan's view on these items changed after he met Sophia. She revealed that she was able to increase her divine powers using these sacred items. She explained this method to our main character. Divine objects were confirmed to increase divine powers of players, but this was only effective while they were still in the tutorial. Sophia revealed that this was why she became a saint. She would hold the divine item and pray for a long time. By doing this, her divine power stat increased. Some items required different methods, but they were all effective. Jihan couldn't believe increasing this stat was so easy. Since no one wanted these items, Sophia was able to buy a lot of them at a low price. However, she didn't get all of them. Someone else had also been buying them. This meant that someone else knew about this method. Our main character guessed who this person was when he returned. He entered a room at their penthouse and found many divine objects lying around. He was shocked to see that all the divine powers of these items were gone. He confirmed his theory that these powers were taken by another saint, who was no other than her sister Seong Jihan. This woman was considered the best support in South Korea. She also fought alongside the Sword King, who became her husband. Sadly, she also died. Among the divine objects she left behind was a steel pole. It didn't have much divine power, but it was still useful. It could even be strengthened if it was used to hit the heads of the cult members. Jihan chose this as his main weapon for this task. Right now, he was just following the item's instructions and continued to smash skulls with it while absorbing its divine power. The grade of this item also decreased, but this weapon was still useful against these monsters. Gaeung was amazed at the control this support player demonstrated. The archer informed Gaeung about a nearby tower that had just failed the mission. He didn't realize that a zombie was near him, but he didn't need to be scared because Gaeung showed her swordsmanship skill. Jihan turned his head towards her as he noticed what she did. He stared at her for a while. He knew she was known as the Plum Blossom Sword. Our main character remembered her from his past life. This woman was considered to be the interim Sword King, but her life didn't end well in his previous life. Gaeung was killed by the original Sword King, Yoon Sejin. While he was remembering this information, Gaeung asked our main character if it was okay for her to also participate in defeating the zombies. She thought it would be easier for them to reach the top spot with this method. Jihan then checked the status window and looked at their rank. They were currently ranked 5th with 398 kills, all done by our main character. With only 1 hour and 28 minutes left, our main character thought they didn't have much time. He knew this woman would do fine without his help, and since he was also aiming for the top spot, he agreed. He then jumped into the sea of zombies, leaving the defense to Gaeung. This was an unusual move, and it left the other two dumbfounded. Our main character continued to fall towards the monsters. He then covered his weapon with his divine powers, intending to gather everything up and finish all these monsters in one strike. After some time, the archer couldn't believe what he was seeing. The system told them they were the only survivors from this mission. This meant they also got the top spot. Jihan was happy because he finished the limited quest event, but he didn't finish the linked quest. He only beat 560 zombies. This also marked the end of the game. As soon as our main character got up, this archer kept thanking him. But even now, Jihan didn't notice this guy. He was busy thinking about trying this stage again when he was a bit stronger. The only issue was he wasn't sure if this quest would show up again next time. Gaeung, on the other hand, stood still. She knew this kind of player didn't make any sense. A support player, who was a lower level than her, managed to do this to these monsters. She wondered if this was a bug. She looked at her teammates as one of them was about to leave. It was the archer. He was still very happy as he logged out. Gaeung then walked towards Jihan. This guy asked her why she knew his name. They hadn't met before this mission. But this lady didn't hear his question. She was busy thinking that this man should join their guild. She was sure that their guild would reach new levels if Jihan was with them. Being very focused on her job, she suddenly asked for his phone number. After a while, this lady realized what she just did. She blushed as our MC asked her again about what she said. This lady was now in a panic. A lot of things ran through her mind and she couldn't explain herself. Jihan then figured out that she was a member of the Divergent Guild. As soon as he heard this, he quickly said he was sorry. He said that he couldn't remember his number. After seeing this, our main character told her that he had to leave and said goodbye. Gaeung didn't get a chance to make things right. She then thought about how someone could forget their own number. This made her think that she got turned down. Back in the real world, our main character was walking home. This guy really had no idea what his Korean phone number was because he had lived in America for the recent years. He also couldn't ask anyone for this information because it would sound weird. He then figured out that maybe he was just about to get asked to join a guild. Jihan thought that he was starting to get noticed a lot and guilds were spotting him. But this guy had no plans to join a guild. Our main character then checked something. This was his current status window. His level went up by 2 and he earned 15 points. This was pretty good, given he also increased his divine powers. The GP he earned was still not enough to buy something from the GP store. He thought that the items were cheaper right now, but he couldn't just spend points like that. This guy then concluded that he would look through his sister's items and hope there was something useful. After a few minutes, he got to his home. He opened the door and went in. But he noticed something. There were a pair of shoes lying on the front step. This confused our main character. Someone was inside his house. Jihan then dropped the food he had bought outside. His hands shook as he thought about someone important in his life. This person was his biggest regret in his past life. He was not able to protect her. This lady greeted our main character. She was amazed because he was awake and able to go outside. Jihan couldn't believe his eyes. In his past life, this lady was the only one who checked on him. She was so strong that she even promised that she would protect Jihan. But this promise was broken. Jihan remembered the time when he lost his niece. That day, he cried a lot. That was also the day he decided to change his life. Right now, his niece was alive and well. He thought that he really missed her sweet smile. The name of his niece was Yoon Sia. She is turning 18 this year. She is the daughter of the Sword King and Jihan's sister. Then, Jihan asked if the group living in Jeju had ended. Sia said that she was the only one who finished early. She did this because everyone was upset about her dad's choice. Even after her dad left her, she kept her smile. This is why she became the most important person in Jihan's life. Our main character felt angry when he heard the news about his brother-in-law. He asked Ju if her dad had contacted her. Yoon Sejin, her father, did call her earlier, but something was wrong. He told Ju that he had fallen in love with another woman. Ju tried to convince her dad to change his mind, but she had no luck. The new woman wanted him to leave everything in Korea and move to Japan with her. When Jihan heard about this, his anger towards the Sword King grew. He let out a sigh, unable to show his anger in front of Sia. Sejin's choice showed he didn't care about his duties as a father. Sia found her family picture was broken. She thought it was her uncle who did it. Jihan told her that he got mad without meaning to, but Sia's reply shocked him. She said she wanted to break it herself. Jihan realized that Sia had always been this way. Even when her mom died or her dad left, she held back her feelings. She always kept her smile and laugh. Jihan knew she did this to protect him, but he knew she didn't have to bear any more pain. He touched her head and told her she had grown up. He promised to protect her from now on. Sia thanked him for his words. Meanwhile, at the Divergent Guild building, Gaeung felt shy. Her boss couldn't help but laugh at her story. Haein stopped laughing to say sorry. She asked for a man's number but he said no. This hurt Gaeung's pride. She told Haein that she wasn't as pretty as her. Hearing this, Haein's face changed. She knew this had become a real issue. Gaeung didn't know how popular she was. Every man in the building wanted to ask her out. Haein warned her that if she went around saying that, she would just get yelled at. They then went to the lounge. Gaeung asked Haein if they were still going to recruit Jihan. Haein said they had no choice. The higher-ups kept asking her to get Jihan into their guild. While having tea, Haein saw a notification on her phone. It was about a live show. She quickly opened it. She wanted to watch her favorite gamblers live stream. Both Gaeung and Haein were surprised to see someone they knew on the stream. The gambler who always predicted the winner of matches was none other than Seong Jihan. Haein watched his stream, even though she didn't know his real identity. But the most important part of his stream was when Jihan told everyone that he was the Sword King's brother-in-law. Viewers started to believe him when they saw him at the top of the Sword Palace. He asked Sia to move so he could show more of his background. More viewers believed him when they heard Ji's name. They knew she was the Sword King's daughter. One viewer panicked when he saw Seong Jihan's feet covered in a powerful aura. Seong Jihan stomped his foot and it created big cracks. The cracks were aimed at the twin sword statue at the top of the Sword Palace. Everyone was shocked when Jihan destroyed the twin sword statue. This place was a landmark in Korea, but Jihan didn't care. He charged his fist towards the statue. Viewers had mixed feelings about what was happening. Jihan destroyed the twin sword statue. More people started watching his stream. It went from 20,000 to over 1 million viewers. The system gave Jihan many achievements for this. He turned to the camera and said he was going to talk about Yoon Sejin becoming a citizen of another country. The platform he was using was called BattleTube. It was the streaming system of Battle.net. This system held the highest market share in the world because it was part of Battle.net. All achievements on this platform also showed up for the players. Since our main character used the name Sword King in his title, he easily earned all the rewards he could get. Jihan quickly became an internet star in minutes. He saw that many people disliked his stream because of what he did. Most people who bought that had a twin sword logo in their pictures. This logo showed that they were part of a devoted fan club for Yoon Sejin, known as the Sword King family. This group sadly played a part in leading Sia to her untimely end. These fans defended the Sword King's choices at first, but as time went on, their love turned into hate. Since Xiao was the only one related to the Sword King, they targeted her next. This sequence of events ended in just tragic death. Our main character felt very angry when he remembered what happened. But now, he wanted to change the future. He wanted everyone's attention, good or bad. Jihan then told everyone that Yoon Sejin, now known as Ito Ryuhei, would not return. He approached the camera with a serious face. He showed a recording that backed up his claim. He added that the Sword King left his daughter for another woman. The recording played and everyone found out the truth. Haein and his gang listened as well. The chat went silent. This news was too much for the entire country. Jihan stopped the recording and quickly checked Sia's reaction. Sia smiled, relieved that at least the whole nation knew why they were abandoned. She then appeared on the stream. She introduced herself as the Sword King's daughter and made an announcement. Even though the decision was sudden, she told everyone that she would give the Sword Palace to the Korean government. She had no plans to accept the inheritance of someone who had abandoned his country and family. The whole building would now be used to help players in the country. Jihan kept silent the entire time his niece gave her speech. 30 minutes earlier, Sia had been surprised at his suggestion to donate the house. She even asked if he was drunk or something. She asked why he wanted to give everything away, but Jihan couldn't answer her immediately. He couldn't find a way to explain to his niece. In his past life, the people's anger towards Sejin grew stronger and forced the Korean government to take all of his assets. This left Sia with nothing. Jihan didn't know how to tell his niece that he knew what was going to happen. Surprisingly, Sia agreed. This puzzled our main character because his suggestion didn't make sense, but just said she trusted her uncle's decision, especially since it had been a long time since she saw this side of him. Right now, Jihan was amazed at how much his niece had grown. Meanwhile, members of the Sword King family kept warning Sia about Jihan. They said she was being tricked. This situation was what Jihan wanted. He wanted all the hate from this group so they wouldn't bother Sia anymore. For the final act, our main character took over the camera. Sia didn't expect this. Jihan kept talking about Sejin, even though this wasn't part of their plan. But the statement that grabbed everyone's attention was when he said the Sword King was a has-been. This meant Sejin was no longer important in this country. He addressed Sejin directly. Jihan told him he knew he had gone to Japan because he couldn't make it in Korea. This left the viewers speechless. Our main character advised the Sword King to stay in Japan because he would be the one to defeat him sooner or later. This statement made everyone excited about the Korea versus Japan matchups. The sun had set when the stream ended. Sia asked her uncle if he really needed to go that far. His words caused a big stir in Korea and Japan. This change made Sia feel that her uncle had really changed. It felt like he was a different person now. This didn't surprise Jihan. He thought there was no way he could act the same way after he died and came back. While they were talking, someone rang the bell. This made them both alert. Sia was scared because she thought people were coming after her uncle. But Jihan knew this wasn't true. The one who rang the bell was someone who could help them make a lot of money. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, Japan, a man heard the news about Japan and Korea. It was Yoon Sejin. The woman beside him woke up when she heard the news about him. We found out her name was Shizuru. Shizuru called the Sword King Sejin, but he told her he went by the name Ito Ryuhei now. But then she hugged him. She said to him, he was still Yoon Sejin, Korea's #1 player, the Sword King. She touched Sejin's face and told him his identity would never change. They were surrounded by a strange aura. Shizuru confessed her love to Sejin and they shared a sweet kiss. It was clear that she wanted the Sword King all to herself. Jihan opened the door to meet him. The person was quite amazed by Jihan's reaction upon seeing him. It was like our main character was already expecting his visit, but Jihan denied this. He said that this was only natural, especially after their family issue just became a big deal. This person was the department manager of the South Korean BattleNet branch. His name is Park Yoon-sik. Back in his past life, the department stopped visiting them when the Sword King left South Korea. This man was the only one who kept Sia and Jihan in check. He really cared about them, and now this person has come back again. Sia greeted Yoon-sik and welcomed him. Jihan smiled as this one entered their house. He thought that the stage was finally set. He also wanted to take all the things he needed. Their conversation started and it was about the Sword King. Manager Yoon-sik informed Jihan that the government has already accepted that Sejin will not be coming back after his live stream. But this was different for the citizens. They can't let the public know about the government's decision. On top of that, Manager Yoon-sik was also concerned about the upcoming match between South Korea and Japan. Our main character already knew about this and told him to get to the point. Jihan also knew that the government wanted these two to take back the Sword Palace. They needed to hold the donation until the Sword King's situation was settled. This guy was now wondering how Jihan seemed to know what he came in here for. He also thought that our main character was like a different person now. The Jihan he knew used to just drink and gamble all day. Manager Yoon-sik then told Jihan that the government hasn't really given up 100% on the Sword King's return. He told him that the government suggested for them to have signed management instead of a donation. This thing was a change of ownership to someone else to manage an organization or business. They wanted Jihan and Seo to look after the Sword Palace until the Sword King's return. This was confirmed as our main character asked manager Yoon-sik if this was really the case. Yoon-sik also brought up some kind of paperwork to make this agreement formal. On top of these formalities, this guy was also concerned about these two's welfare, so he wanted them to stay at the Sword Palace. He then explained the contents of the contracts. He told them that these clauses were all intended for the benefit of both parties. Our main character was quite impressed because he knew that the government really put in effort this time. He was willing to give the Sword Palace right away. But this setup works for them better. Jihan then agreed to all the terms, but he informed manager Yoon-sik that he still needed one more thing. Seo got confused because she had no idea what her uncle was about to say. Meanwhile, a notification saying that a player named Golden Light has started streaming. The people who were early in the chat were thrilled to see this one. They also got amused because this player was currently on the head of the Colosseum statue. This player right here was Golden Light. He greeted his viewers with his bright smile and aura. He told everyone that today's stream will be held in the blood and dusty Colosseum. This one even made a superhero entrance as he went his way inside. Once again, he formally introduced himself as the streamer Golden Light. One of the viewers even donated 100 GP as he requested for this streamer to teach the bronze players some lessons. This donation made Golden Light gasp. The players around him saw him and they were quite disgusted. They already knew who this player was and they were all hoping for him to get a misfortune. All of them hated this guy. He was quite famous for his dashing looks and cheerful aura. But the most notable characteristic of this player was that he was known to be a troll player. This guy was already known to be a Gold League player, but he demoted himself to Bronze League just so he could bully weak players. He even called this move as deep sea traveling. This one really didn't care about the game as long as he was having fun. Golden Light was considered as the pinnacle of troll. His stats and equipment still equaled the Gold League players. This made him effortlessly defeat the bronze players. This individual was already being labeled as a lunatic. After a while, this one decided to clear up the mood in his stream. He announced to all that he would now search for his first victim. While he was doing this, someone got his attention. He saw Seong Jihan. Our main character was simply dressed in sweatpants, holding a strange tool. Golden Light spoke to this fellow, catching his eye. He thought he could use Jihan as his content for the day. Golden Light quickly walked up to him, asking questions about the Sword King. But for our hero, Golden Light was becoming annoying. He found the streamer too loud. Seeing him stream gave Jihan an idea, so he opened his status window. Golden Light told everyone that he was ignored by Seong Jihan. But as you can see, our main character was busy with something. Jihan started his live stream and viewers began to watch his instead of Golden Light's. Golden Light began to panic, thinking he just gave someone free publicity. He needed people to watch his stream, not Jihan's. But then, a notice showed up, grabbing his attention. Someone gave him a task about defeating Jihan in this league so he could end up in last place. The reward for this was 2,000 GP. This amount of GP was equal to 2 million. Golden Light started seeing the Sword family's icons and knew they were behind this mission. More members of this group joined his stream and decided to increase the reward. He knew the Sword family held a grudge against our main character, but not to this level. The bounty kept increasing. Golden Light got worried as people kept adding GP. The bounty was now at 31,978 GP. He tried to hide his thrill, thinking it might reach 50,000 GP. But his excitement was interrupted by a system notice that the game would start. The final bounty reached 42,713 GP. In the middle of all the players in the Colosseum, Golden Light yelled. He was upset because he wanted the GP to reach 50,000. One Sword family member heard his plea and promised to give an extra 10,000 GP if he succeeded in his task. Golden Light's face changed instantly. He was filled with drive, thinking his act worked. He looked at our main character, thinking he had nowhere to go but down. Golden Light started casting his skill and a bright light covered him. He was about to charge towards Jihan using a skill called Charge that lets him move forward very fast. In no time, Golden Light was behind our hero. He was grinning, thinking he was about to make the easiest money ever, but Jihan blocked his attack. The impact of their hits could be seen. Golden Light wondered why his hand was forced back. The weapon our hero used against him was a cooking set club, a lower grade item. To block a Gold League player's attack, Jihan countered with all he had. He thought it was only fair to pay respects to this player as well. He was about to use his sword when Golden Light received hundreds of slashes while still in midair. He screamed in pain. The viewers in Jihan's stream went wild. They had just seen a Bronze League player use a move called Sword Kai. Our main character was rewarded for the first blood in this match. People also wondered why divine power was flowing from his body. They didn't expect him to be a support class. The sword our hero used was also a cooking set item. It was a kitchen knife. Jihan looked calm after defeating a Gold League player, thinking he hadn't cooked in a while. A soft voice was heard in the big ring. It was a known voice. This voice was from Golden Light. He could come back to life. People who did not know much thought he cheated or messed with the system. But this comeback was all due to a thing called Crucifix of Revival. This thing could only be used once and not in National League games or group fights. This streamer made a big show again, but look at this pair of feet behind him. His fans were not happy seeing him again. Even if he came back to life, he will be last in this game. Golden Light wanted to win his fans back by coming back strong, but I think he won't be able to do it. Bad luck was close by. The smile on this streamer's face went away when he saw the person next to him. Our main character smiled at him when they saw each other. After a few moments, Golden Light died again. Jihan got the alert for double kill. He thought he had not seen that thing for a while now. Players in his past life stopped using this thing because it has big problems. He then looked at the ones watching this game. He needed to say hello to them today. The watchers for today's match were elves. They were all looking at Jihan. Our main character knew that this group also played a big part in humans' downfall. He was going to deal with the elves later as he has more important things to do now. Jihan saw that the players around him stopped moving. They were now looking at our main character. He thought that these guys had teamed up to beat him, but this was not the case. They all started to run as soon as Jihan looked at them. These guys were scared to fight our main character because they all saw how he beat a Gold League player. This kind of let Jihan down because he could not hunt as much. He was just thinking of using these D-rank holy things in this match, and to use their godly power, he needed to fight more players. An alert then showed up. Our main character smiled as he was not expecting this kind of task right now. The system wanted him to beat all the goblins that were around the goblin boss. These monsters already saw our main character. This goblin screamed as soon as it saw Jihan, but not because it was trying to scare him. It was running for its life. Jihan hit the goblin with his club. After his first combo, he did a series of quick cuts using a kitchen knife. The system told him that this was really the right way of using this set item. This guy was happy that it worked. His plan was to hit the heads and then stab the hearts. Jihan found this trick just before the game ended, but it took him too long. He would have done better if he found it earlier. On the good side, there is still one goblin left, and this was a goblin boss. It stood a lot taller than Jihan. The system gave our main character some info about this boss monster, but he was too lazy to read it because he didn't need info on how to beat this monster. One hit and it made this one fall to the ground. Our main character then brought out the kitchen knife again. In his view, goblin bosses were just bigger goblins, nothing more, nothing less. With that, the task of beating them was done. Using these set items also gave him one divine power, and as he thought, using the godly power from these holy items will make them weaker. Jihan knew he could still make one more divine power from these things, but he thought they were too slow for hunting monsters. He then shifted his focus to the other players in the arena, but they were just too far away. These guys had really put a lot of distance between themselves and Jihan. This annoyed our main character, but he didn't mind it at all. He decided he would just go and hunt them himself. The people watching his stream all felt his scare. They felt bad for the players who were in the same match with Jihan. Meanwhile, in Seoul Metropolitan City, there was a guy with golden hair in the middle of his anger. It was none other than Golden Light. He was now checking the internet for articles about him. The people were telling him he was weak, but the truth was, Jihan was just too strong. Some people already made an analysis of his stats. They thought he was at 35 and above. This was from the videos they had. But this guy knew that the Bronze League player's stat limit was at 25 points. It really didn't make sense that Jihan had 35 points and above. In the end, Golden Light thought that maybe Jihan was a hacker. He also got up and watched the stream again because he heard a weird sound from this guy's attacks. Something also caught his attention. He couldn't believe what he just saw. Jihan just dashed towards multiple players and defeated them all at once. This was really a one-sided match. The viewers commented that they were now seeing high-class art. This guy just made a pentakill. The people were all now cheering for him. Other players inside the Colosseum also teamed up against him. Our main character just watched this development. Buffed arrow spells were aimed at Jihan, but our main character deflected everything. He wasn't even having a hard time. Jihan had a bored expression on his face. These two knew they had messed up. After a few seconds, Jihan defeated 2 more players. The chat was going crazy because he was the first person to get 10 kills in a row after Yoon Sijin. The set items reacted again and gave another 1 divine power stat. This meant that these set items were now useless. Jihan also managed to get a hidden quest after getting 10 kills at the Colosseum. It gave him 5,000 achievement points. He was quite happy with how things went today. He got all the things he needed, but still, he thought he needed more power. As he looked at his status window, something caught his eye. This was the first time he saw an epic quest. It wanted him to find the Shadow Queen, who was now watching his battle. Jihan was confused because these kinds of quests were not found in the Bronze League. As for the rewards, the system was really generous. The 50,000 achievement points plus the interest of the constellation Shadow Queen. These constellations were known as the absolute beings that represent the stars. They were also the divine beings in the battle net. These beings could sponsor a player based on their interest in them, especially if the player showed a lot of potential. They would also give the players abilities that were out of this world. Jihan suddenly got serious because this was a big deal. Usually, constellations only appear in Diamond League matches. He then thought he needs to get this one's attention right now. If he could attach one constellation, the others might also notice him. The only problem was that Jihan had no way of finding this being right away. He looked at the spectators again and there were a lot of elves. Our main character knew that this Shadow Queen might be hiding herself behind these guys. They were also the only ones who didn't take their eyes off him. Seong Jihan showing in his last game is now being shown all over South Korea. News outlets also featured his feats as he was the only one who had done this since the Sword King. His BattleTube channel also gained 10,000 subscribers and 4,000 simultaneous viewers. Some of the members of the Sword family also became his supporters. This group has now turned their attention towards Golden Light because he failed their last mission request. This guy has also noticed the impact of his loss on Jihan. He thought his reputation was really getting bad, but for him, there's really nothing he could do except plan to become a fan of Seong Jihan as well. Golden Light wanted to get into the good side of our main character, so he could also ride the Jihan train to fame. He also aspired to become Jihan's editor. Meanwhile, back at the Sword Palace, Sia saw her uncle again and she was now asking him how he became that strong. This question got our main character's attention. This lady told her uncle that she felt bad for those who got beaten by Jihan. But he just shrugged that comment off, saying the world of competition was this cold and cruel. Sia also mentioned about the people who wanted to donate some GP to Jihan. This guy forgot to set this feature beforehand. She also mentioned to her uncle that he should also set a minimum donation for his stream. Jihan then thought of raising it to a minimum of 10,000 GP. This amount nearly equates to 10 million won or $7,600. Sia was shocked as this amount was just too much. Along with this thought, Jihan was still thinking about the epic quest he got. He really needs to find the Shadow Queen, and based on his last battle, he still had no idea how to find her. His brainstorming was then cut off by Sia. She asked her uncle if he needed some help. This lady knew the face of her uncle and things weren't going his way. Jihan smiled as he remembered her sister. She also used to have this trait, but since his niece offered help, he gladly accepted it. Our main character then started to explain the epic quest to Sia. He told her that he needed to find some clue about the Shadow Queen and the only thing he knew was this person was among the audience. Sia was really determined to help her uncle and she had this bright aura around her. Jihan went to his room after that. He was now thinking if it was a good idea to involve his niece in his quest. But this idea still made him proud. With that, our main character decided to deal with more important matters now. He then called his status window. This was one of the things he needed to take care of, the second class that the system allowed him to have. Jihan apparently bought the extra class slot for 10,000 GP last time and right now, he could choose among these three classes. Our main character smiled because he already knew what he would choose this time. Jihan chose the mage class. The system confirmed his choice and a dark aura then surrounded him. He felt a new power that was now flowing from his heart. This one was more different than the divine power. Jihan decided to test it out right away. He also had his reason why he decided to choose this class. Apparently, he could obtain another unique stat from having both support and mage class. Our main character started to concentrate and after a few seconds, he tried to gather both of the powers from his two classes. Combining support and mage class would give him force. Jihan found out about this one from Baron. His guild leader got drunk one night and he decided to reveal the secret behind his powerful skill. This was also one of those times when Baron showed his unbiased side to Jihan. He told our main character back then that if he was a real American citizen, Baron would have been nicer to him. That night, Baron also talked about the Force. Jihan found out that Force was the stat when someone combined divine powers and mana perfectly. Baron really didn't care telling him this information because in this world, he was the only man who got two classes. This was the secret behind the most powerful human. Back in his previous life, this stat was considered to be a triple S class gift. Jihan got curious about it and tried to ask Baron more information about the Force. It was then revealed that someone could achieve it if their divine power and mana were already at level 10 and above. Our main character was really thankful to this guy for his arrogance, because right now he could use the same power that dominated space. He then found out that even if he knew about the requirements for this unique stat, he couldn't just use it that easily. Jihan continued to combine his divine powers and mana, but he clearly struggled. He also continued to focus. He knew that he would need this power if he wanted to save the Earth this time. He was also the only one who could do it. Jihan thought that he needed to endure this pain no matter what. This guy just created a red ray again, but he still couldn't control it. After a few seconds, the force calmed down. Jihan thought that he had done it, but the force he had gathered suddenly exploded. This nearly destroyed his room. He was now in pain from this failure. Our main character then got back up again and thought that he still couldn't do it. Using his strength was not enough to master this power. When he calmed down, he thought that he may need to have more mana before attempting this thing again. He also felt that his mana ran out after this one. He also found out that he can't contain the said force in his hands. This thought then gave him another idea. Our main character stood back up again. He closed his eyes and started to imagine how divine power and mana works. He thought he really didn't need to hold on to this force using his hands. Jihan wanted to try containing this powerful stat inside his body. He concentrated and gathered them at the center of his body. He was now trying to fuse the mana from his central danshin and the divine power from his lower danshin. This allowed him to form this force that eliminates leaks. Our main character also tried to compress this force even more. This one was like trying a new approach to understand this concept even further. But his attempt seemed to be a mistake because the powerful aura exploded right inside his body. It also caused him a lot of pain. The system then informed him that the one he tried to do was to combine 3 danshins. A red notification also popped out. This only meant danger. Jihan just tried to surpass the certain limits he could endure. This was also proven to be dangerous for his life. Sia heard something while she was inside her room. She immediately thought of her uncle. In every person's body, there is a consolidation of 3 danshins. In our MC's case, he tried to blend his divine powers with mana, but he also subconsciously used his martial power to contain and compress these 2 forces. His attempt to mix these 2 powers was already seen as too risky. Each Kai was very strict, and their natures were all different. The bare minimum for this was that the player should have at least 100 points and above on all of their stats. If someone were to try this, they could easily lose their life. The same thing is happening with Jihan right now. The powers inside his body are reacting and creating chaos. Sia was alarmed by the loud screams she heard from her uncle's room. She quickly ran towards it, thinking her uncle was in danger. She opened the door and yelled her uncle's name. She was then stunned by what she saw. After a few moments, she got some ice cubes and a towel. It turns out, our MC survived the mistake he made. He pretended to have an intense headache so as not to worry his niece. Sia then said sorry to her uncle for shouting at him. She wiped the tears from her eyes and told her uncle that she was scared because she thought something bad had happened to him. Jihan then realized that he had been a bit thoughtless. He hadn't considered how his niece was feeling. Sia stopped crying and asked Jihan if he was okay now. Our MC told her that he was fine and also said sorry for making her worry. These words surprised Sia. She then changed the mood by playfully hitting her uncle, indicating their intent to move forward. Sia then said goodbye because she still had to find some clues about the Shadow Queen. As she was leaving, our MC thought that he should not show his weak side to her in the future. Going back to his earlier attempt, the system confirmed that he failed because he was still lacking experience and level. But he felt some relief because after that attempt, he could now use the Force. He was successful in containing the divine power and mana together. The only thing he failed at was the mixing of the 3 powers. This failure also gave him a deeper understanding of how these unique stats work. It allowed him to have this weak link between the 3 stats. Our MC was surprised as he checked the current level of his Force stat. It started at the same value as his martial power, which was at 12 stats. The system then told him that since he was able to form this weak link between the 3, it allowed them to interact and share their ability values with each other. Jihan was stunned as he realized how powerful this development was. He just needed to raise the level of one unique stat and the other one will also increase. With his experiment, both of his unique stats were now at 14 stats. Our MC thought that this was really like finding a cheat code inside a game. But he decided not to dwell on this as he was still too underleveled. He might die if he happened to mess things up again. Jihan then tried using the most basic skill of a mage. He cast a fireball out of his hands and a small fire appeared. The system informed him that this fire was small because he has no mana left. Our MC was speechless learning about this. The next day, our MC woke up because of the sunlight that managed to pass through the curtains. He was also woken up by the system's notification that he just gained 10 divine powers. This also meant that he cannot gain any more divine power from holy items D rank and below. The holy items that he placed beside him last night were now useless. Jihan then got up, regretting buying these items from the points he got. He also went outside to check on his niece. He found out that she had stayed up all night because of the task he gave her. This only proved that finding clues about the Shadow Queen was really hard. But this hard-working lady still managed to find something useful. She showed a video from another streamer that was watching the match in the Colosseum. This one specifically focuses on the other species that were in the audience. Jihan was annoyed because a player was using this kind of gift just to film other species. But Sia continued to talk and something got his attention. It was at this part of the stream where the streamer featured the royal elves. These two both looked like high-ranked elves, but the most notable part was that one of them was a dark elf. RMC thought that if the Shadow Queen were to disguise herself, this would be a perfect form. RMC then praised Sia for her excellent work, but in the back of his head, finding the Shadow Queen with that kind of reasoning was impossible. It can't be that easy. Sia then told her uncle that she will continue looking for more clues and she will try watching more videos from streamers abroad. She will even edit and compile all the videos for Jihan. This was the first time Jihan found out that his niece has a talent in video editing. This lady was the one who edits the videos of her dad and uploads some of his matches. This thought also made our MC and Sia remember Yoon Sejin once again. He looked at their portrait and thought of something. Jihan was wondering if this man really has what it takes to just leave his daughter for another woman. 2 days earlier, this was a time when manager Yoonsik visited their house. This guy told Jihan and Sia about the name of Sejin's new girl, Ito Shizuru. It was also revealed that this woman has a triple S gift called Woman of Matchless Beauty. This power allows her to make everyone in one country fall in love with her. These two were both shocked by this information. Jihan then thought that maybe this woman used her skill on Sejin, and now he was head over heels for her. This was a secret that the government of South Korea was protecting. It also explains why they were still not giving up the Sword King. Manager Yoonsik also warned Jihan. He told him that this was not the first case they have encountered with Shizuru. Some of their rising players have also gone and changed their nationalities to Japan after meeting this lady, and since Jihan was starting to get some attention, he could become her next target. After that meeting, RMC tried checking the internet for some information about this lady, but nothing came up. Japan was really carefully hiding her identity. Jihan then thought that he should really be wary of this lady because he had no idea who she was. RMC then decided to prepare for something while he waits for some more developments. He knew that if manager Yoonsik was telling the truth, Japan would make some moves soon. His prediction was spot on as the Neo Self-Defense Force of Japan just landed in South Korea. The next day, we saw Sia in her pretty dress. She asked her uncle to hurry up because they were going to be late. RMC was dressed in a suit. He told Sia that they were leaving. This man was looking forward to meeting some important guests. The two got on the lift. While they were inside, Jihan noticed that Sia seemed nervous. He told her to chill out as there was nothing to fear. The two were about to make their first public showing since the issue with the Sword King. Jihan told her to be sure and brave, like their last stream. With her uncle's words, Sia calmed down fast. The lift doors opened and many guests met them. This was the state of the Sword Palace's lobby. One man walked up to Jihan. He said they had been waiting for him and everything was set. RMC thanked the man. He had trusted him with everything. This man was manager Yoonsik. He was the one who had planned everything, even the smallest bit of this event. Manager Yoonsik then told Jihan that he hadn't thought he would get this kind of help from him. Jihan had asked the South Korea government to hold a sale for the things the old Sword King Yoon Sejin had owned. They were slowly reaching the main point of this event. Jihan had wanted to bring the Japan force here and trick them into buying all of Sejin's things. RMC was the one who had picked which item would be shown today. These things were Sejin's battle link and the battle data in this tech. Jihan knew that Japan would be very interested in these things. Meanwhile, a fancy car was going towards the Sword Palace. Inside were two men, and one was holding two swords. Jihan was expecting the Sword King himself to come to this event. He hoped that, if this happened, the people of Korea would understand their situation better. Manager Yoonsik was really amazed by how this man was handling things. It was like he was seeing the future. Jihan also said that this event might be their last shot at changing what the public thinks. He even asked all the reporters to watch Japan's table closely. But as they were finishing their plan, some people started yelling Sia's name. Sia turned and saw her aunts and uncles trying to get into the event. They asked Sia if she had lost her mind because she was about to sell her father's most valued things. Hearing these words made Jihan sad. He was even called a fake by Sia's aunt. But this lady's words stunned everyone. She said that these people were the ones who had been using the Sword King's name for their own good. They had even used it to cheat other people. As soon as they heard her reply, they were silent. Sia told them that she knew more than they thought and this was their reaction. She made sure they knew what was really happening. Everything her father had left was hers now and they had no right to it, even if they argued. Sia then turned and told the guards to remove them. Jihan didn't think his niece could be this cool. He praised her for her bravery. After that, manager Yoon-sik told them they were ready. This old man helped them into the auction room and they went right up to the platform. All the reporters and news folks who were present got excited when they saw Sia and Jihan. They even started throwing questions at RMC. They asked why they were having this sale. Sia also got questions. She was asked if someone had made or pushed her to this choice. But the two kept their cool and walked calmly. The reporters didn't stop, so RMC decided to use his new skill. Jihan flicked his fingers and a camera broke. They were all wondering how their cameras broke. Jihan told everyone that this was not a press meeting, it was a sale. They didn't welcome unwanted questions. With that, Jihan told everyone that they were starting the sale. He said they had prepared 3 items from Yoon Sejin's collection. The first one was a battle link, which blocks 99% of the damage felt in the game. The other ones were things which held Yoon Sejin's study of his battles against other players. This included their battle style and info. The people who had been invited to this sale were from the top companies and they all wanted a piece of these priceless items. Jihan knew that they would all try to get these items, especially for the coming South Korea versus Japan matches. A hand was raised to get RMC's attention. He was shocked when he saw who it was. The one who raised his hand was Takakoji, the hiring manager of Japan's Neo Self-Defense Force, and he was with a man who looked like Yoon Sejin. This man wanted to bid right away as the sale had officially begun. The Japanese hiring manager offered 5 billion yen. This made all the others in the room look at him. He said that this would be his offer for all the items in the sale. He also wanted to have a private meeting with Jihan and Sia, but RMC had guessed this move from Japan. He walked up to Mr. Takeda and told him that if he wanted to talk, they could do it there. Jihan also didn't like private meetings because the public might not like it. Mr. Takeda didn't care about these remarks and asked RMC not to glare at him like that. He also warned him not to act tough because someone might step in. As soon as he said this, the man with twin swords stood in front of Jihan. This man was Mr. Takeda's personal guard and his name was Shadow. He said this man was not as great as the Sword King, but Shadow was one of their best players. This was meant to scare RMC, but Jihan's eyes just stared right at them. He was now wondering if this man in front of him was a copy of Yoon Sejin. Jihan was confronted by Shadow, a helper of Mr. Takeda. She tried to scare him with his blade, but it didn't work. Jihan wasn't afraid. He then punched her. This powerful player was surprised and stepped back. After some time, all she did was show his anger. Jihan asked if she still wanted to fight. Just by his presence, she was scared. He told her he was showing this fight on his BattleTube account, and many people around the world were watching. People watching were also looking at Japan's moves. Mr. Takeda gave up too. He said Japan wouldn't do such a thing. Mr. Takeda also said sorry to Jihan. But behind these nice acts, this old man wanted something. He wanted a private talk with Jihan and Sia. He said he'd give them 5 billion for it. He wanted Sia's decision because she was related to the Sword King. He hinted he knew where her father was. Sia didn't know what to say. He said he'd answer any questions she had about her dad. Mr. Takeda's actions were bad. By his look, we could tell he had a plan. He thought Sia would take the 5 billion, but she didn't. She said no. This surprised him. He couldn't believe they said no to 5 billion just for a meeting. Sia had more to say. She said she was young and her uncle would decide for her. People at the auction were happy because they thought they had a better chance to win. Mr. Takeda was quiet, then said something different. He still offered 5 billion, even without the meeting. Jihan was upset. He thought Mr. Takeda was playing games. Then, Mr. Takeda said he was told to offer 5 billion from the start. He gave a letter to Sia from her dad. This made her sad. The letter had a new name, one her dad chose. Mr. Takeda was proud and thought he might win the auction. After some time, Japan was named the winner of the Sword King's items. Jihan remembered the man from before. He knew that the group this man was part of wasn't allowed in the USA. This man, Mr. Takeda, was good at getting players from other countries. People called him Japan's calamity. Jihan wondered if this man knew the player with the triple S skill. He knew he had to be careful around him. Jihan felt something was wrong at this event. The Japan group stopped the big sale quickly. It seemed like they had a plan. Many people from South Korea were upset about this event. They felt they wasted their time. But then, everyone looked at the middle of the stage when they heard Sia's voice. She read a letter from her dad, the Sword King. He said this was the last thing he was giving her. He also said he wasn't her dad anymore. Everyone was quiet. She was sad and started to cry. She knew the letter was real because it was in her dad's writing. Jihan felt bad for his niece and thought the Japan group did something to the Sword King. Jihan knew the kind of man Sejin was. He wasn't the best husband, but he was a good dad. He didn't think Sejin would hurt his daughter like this. Sia ripped the letter. She wanted her dad to know she was okay without him. She felt bad for making a mess, but Jihan made a red ball that picked up the paper pieces. When he closed his hand, the paper burned. Everyone was surprised. They didn't know Jihan could do magic. They were confused because Jihan was strong and also had special powers. Mr. Taekta wanted Jihan to join him. He was excited. But as people walked by Mr. Taekta, they all wanted to talk to Jihan. They wanted him in their teams. Jihan was surprised and felt awkward. He said he didn't want to join a team now. He looked at Sia and wanted her to leave, but she felt sick. She said her head hurt a lot and then she fell down. Jihan was scared and ran to help her. This lady was clearly not feeling well. Jihan was already thinking of bringing her to the hospital. He remembered the time when Sia died in his arms. She then grabbed onto her uncle's suit. Sia whispered to Jihan that she was just acting right now. She even winked at her uncle. This was her way of saving him against the crowd. All of these guys were now waiting for what would happen next. They still wanted to continue their offers towards Jihan. Our MC checked his niece again and she was really fine. He sighed because this reminded him of his sister once again. The viewers were also fooled by her acting. They now blamed her father for this. Jihan then stood up and told everyone that they will end the event here. Sia all was not in her best condition now and she needed some rest. These two continued their acting. They were really good at what they were doing. Mr. Taekta then tried to approach them but he was blocked by the guards. He shouted at Jihan and apologized for what he had caused. He then brought out his business card. He wanted to invite them properly next time. The card then flew suddenly and after a few seconds, it was shredded to pieces. This old man could only watch this unexpected scene. Jihan casted his force and told Mr. Taker that this was his response. He will always decline their offer. The viewers of his stream also enjoyed what happened. They can't believe that the team leader of the 4th guild in the world was just rejected by a bronze player. Mr. Taekta kept silent but deep inside he was still shaking in excitement. He knew that Seong Jihan's power was the real deal. Our MC even showed an unknown power that shredded his business card. This one was really worth it. He thought that Jihan still had a lot to show to them. On top of that, he was just a bronze player. He could still rise among the ranks in the future. Mr. Taekta has locked his eyes on him. He really wanted to get Jihan now. Meanwhile, these two were successful in their plan. Jihan praised his niece for doing something like that. Sia has really done a great job today. Our MC was then interrupted as the system showed him an unread notification. This was a donation for Mr. Taekta himself. He donated 10,000 GP. He also introduced himself as Jihan's #1 fan. Now Jihan can't believe that this old man still donated even when he had already turned off the stream. Sia was still disgusted at the way those guys acted. A mysterious lady then appeared and greeted these two. Jihan and Sia didn't expect to see someone outside the event. This lady was none other than Lee Haeun. She quickly introduced herself as the 3rd department head of the Divergent Guild. She was also with Gang. She then quickly apologized for this sudden meeting. She explained that she really wanted to meet him. Jihan then asked her how she got here, as this one was already prohibited to other guests. On top of that, our MC seemed to find her voice familiar. Haeun told him that she has deep ties with South Korea's BattleNet department, and she used this connection for this. Hearing her confident reply, Jihan thought of someone who also has this kind of attitude. Haeun offered a handshake towards our MC. In that short period of time, he figured out where she heard this same voice. This one was from the guesser of the Victory Xing. This masked lady was one of the players he met during his past life. This was also the first time he found out about her real identity. Jihan was still staring at her while ranging and confirming his thoughts. Sia noticed it. She was now wondering why her uncle was doing this kind of expression. She quickly panicked as she thought that maybe her uncle had fallen in love with Haeun. Jihan then spoke and stated this famous quote which goes like this: "While the world is full of possibility, it is difficult to ignore that." Haeun and Ganyang were shocked when they heard this passage. This quote was from Dostoevsky, who was a great writer and was also known for his gambling addiction. Jihan had this expression as he asked Haeun if she liked that quote. Ganyang immediately stepped forward to protect Haeun. She was now asking Jihan his real identity. Gang was now really puzzled because this guy knew about her master's favorite motto. She also started to mumble that only a few people knew about her master's gambling problem. This response made our MC chuckle. It confirmed his hypothesis. The player named Zero was one of the members of his former guild American First. She was also known as Manager Zero. This lady was the only Korean player beside Jihan. She was also able to rise to the top using her voice ability. This ability started as a simple experience buff towards the players, but as soon as the tutorial ended, this one evolved and can now affect the stats and gifts of the players. This one was then hailed as one of the strongest voice ability users around the world. Her name was Zero. Haeun was now starting to get embarrassed from what Gang was saying. Jihan was now quite amazed at the Divergent Guild because they already have strong players right now. He also made an alibi that he just saw Haeun in one of his broadcasts in the past. He told her that Haeun chatted about that motto and it made him easily remember it. Gang was now asking her master if she really chats while she was watching streams. Haeun then started talking again. She immediately cleared the mood as she was not comfortable being called a gambler. Jihan smiled with her response and Sia saw it. She now concluded that her uncle liked Haein. This lady then started to exude her charms. She told Jihan that she wouldn't really mind being treated as a gambler if this will help them have a friendlier atmosphere. Haein took her phone and gave it to Jihan. Sia thought that this lady also liked her uncle. They were about to exchange numbers. This was also the time when Haein revealed that she wants Jihan to join the Divergent Guild. She wanted to meet him again. Sia started to blush. She thought that she was already getting an aunt. Haein was also satisfied with how she handled the situation. She felt sexy and so confident while talking with Jihan. She then looked at Gaeung as she wanted to show her how it was done. However, this woman was completely clueless about the current situation. This was Lee Haein's demonstration of charm, but even with this beauty, our MC still declined this offer. He told Haein that he can't remember his phone number. This response left these two utterly bewildered. Our MC even tried to ask his niece about his number, and this caught Sia off guard. Sia then started to think of some scenarios in her mind. She thought that her uncle was just playing hard to get. With this, Sia continued her acting and showed everyone that she was still not feeling well. Jihan was now confused if Sia was still faking it or not, but nonetheless, he still went with it and told Han that they will be leaving now. This lady was then left there rejected. She was still holding her business card. Sia has this kind of expression as she thought that she was just helping her uncle with his love life. Meanwhile, Gaeung started to tremble after that incident. She was now holding her laughter as her master also met the same fate as her. She also got rejected by Jihan and was told the same answer. Haein got annoyed after experiencing that embarrassing moment. After that meeting with Haein, Sia told her uncle that he was doing a lot of unexpected things these days. This was also the first time he saw Jihan wear suits. On top of that, these were Yoon Sejin's clothes. Sia then opened up the topic of what he did earlier with Haein. She told her uncle that his style was too old and tacky. The strategy of using the first man to ever reject me was just too updated, but Jihan just got confused. This lady then continued telling her and saw that it was fine playing hard to get, but the whole alibi thing with his phone number was too terrible. Jihan then told her that he really had no idea what she was talking about. The seriousness on her uncle's face proved that he was telling the truth. A moment of silence for Sia. She really got it all wrong this time. She then asked her uncle if he had already acquired dementia. After that incident, a new game has started. It was the same defense mission. Again, Jihan was transported. He was still tired from the event. On top of that, he was also busy trying to comfort Sia a while ago. This lady was regretting her acting in front of Haein. She thought that she just ruined her uncle's chance of having a relationship. Jihan sighed because her niece really thought that he liked Haein. This guy also didn't expect to meet someone from his past like that. Zero is someone who will really help him in his quest to save the world. Back then, these two got close as they were the ones who lost their home country. They often watched sports and bet on who would win. This was also the time he found out that this lady was so obsessed with gambling. But most of the time, Zero would bet on the wrong teams. She would often bug Jihan for knowing who to bet on. That particular night, this player was the MVP of the game. A player named Diego Macid carried his team by using his gift called God of Soccer. Since she was really unlucky in this type of field, Jihan often advised Zero to stop gambling. But she didn't listen. This lady was captivated by the idea of endless possibilities. Jihan also found out that the scar on Zero's face was a price she paid in exchange for making a deal with the devil. She would not erase this one even if other players could easily remove it. These two kept on drinking. They really have a lot of similarities aside from being refugees. Zero also asked this guy something she was wondering, how he got so strong. She still regrets that she was not as strong back when their country was being destroyed. She knew that her friend wouldn't have died if she was just more capable. This lady also blamed herself for everything. Self-hatred and guilt were what bonded these two together. They both failed to protect the things that were important to them. Jihan got silent as he remembered those things in the past. He thought that this was his chance to change it all. But the atmosphere changed as the viewers on his stream reacted to his sentimental moment. Some of them were even asking why he was in a suit and not in sweatpants. The viewers also started to lose their minds as they saw this massive weapon on our MC's right hand. This weapon was called the Urk Pointiff's Horse-Slaying Sword. This one was a C-grade item. The weapon's proportion was not that great and normal people couldn't wield this one. That explained its cheap price on the market. Our MC then tried swinging it to familiarize himself with how to use this weapon. Each swing created a massive impact on his surroundings. Jihan treated this sword like it was just a wooden stick. People were now really curious about his status window. They all wanted to see it. He was able to read these comments while trying out his new weapon. This scene really got the viewers' attention as they saw his warrior strength and some weird magic spells. Jihan stopped with his training as he was getting annoyed with the messages. He now has 12,000 viewers. He was now thinking of showing them his status window because the ones who were requesting this were the people who were on his stream right from the start. This was his current BattleTube achievements right now. It was not clear what it meant with subscriber gathering, but this guy started to address the people on his stream. He started this by introducing himself as Seong Jihan. Our MC was really smart. He told everyone that he will reveal his status window once he reaches 200,000 subscribers. This revelation made the other people tell him that this was really an impossible task. Right now, our MC only has around 10,000 subs. Jihan also told them that he will add one more condition for this challenge. This guy promised to rank first place in any game from now on, and if he failed to do this just once, he will reveal his status window. This resulted in his viewers getting hyped up. They were now praying for him to be teamed up with trolls. After this, 3 bright lights appeared in the sky. Jihan then prepared himself right away. These 3 rays of light will soon reveal the identities of his teammates for this defense game. He then turned his head towards them as he found out who these people were. He thought that this really didn't make any sense. His viewers also started laughing. Their wish was granted. Jihan's teammates were Golden Light, Kim Joo-hak, and the person who was featured on their throwback, Diego Macid. In our MC's perspective, he remembered this guy as Sparkly. This one who was still annoyed by what happened last time was someone he can't remember. But as for the last guy, Jihan had his eyes on him. This person who has a triple S gift was someone he was familiar with. Diego Macid was also known to be Argentina's top player in his previous life. Our MC also felt that Diego was not as strong as he was last time. Jihan then noticed something. He recalled their roles once again. He was the support, Sparkly was a warrior, and the other person was the mage. That only meant that their archer for this defense game was this guy. Right before Jihan regressed, he was sure that this guy was a mage. He was now thinking about what happened. Meanwhile, Kim Joo-hak was furious as he didn't expect to meet Jihan again. Our MC was the reason why he lost his precious skill last time. While he was staring at Jihan, Kim Joo-hak received the reward mission from a member of the Sword family. He was shocked as he saw the requirement for this one. Someone gave him the task of destroying their own crystals so they could make Jihan place last on the rankings. This will give him 50,000 GP. After that, the game began immediately. These guys have started defending their tower. Diego was now showing his incredible skill in handling his soccer ball. People didn't expect an archer to use a ball as their main weapon. But this was not impossible for this man. He even got the nickname of Soccer God. This man then talked to Jihan. He was asking for some buffs as he needed more power. Our MC knew that as a support, this was his real role in the game. This was also the first time he was about to cast some buff spells. Last time he didn't have enough divine power to cast these ones. Our MC concentrated and used the strength buff. All of them then received the buff for their strength stat. Golden Light was really happy receiving such great support from our MC. This also confirmed that he was really a support class, even though he was wielding a huge sword instead of a staff. Joo-hak didn't expect to also receive a buff from our MC, especially from what happened to them before. Jihan then got his attention. He asked Joo-hak if he was willing to play along properly this time. And since this game was now being broadcasted, he quickly said yes. Golden Light noticed that these two were familiar with each other, so he thought they were friends. Jihan was relieved to hear this. After that, the so-called support jumped down towards the zombies. He told everyone that he would leave the tower to them. This really confused his teammates, except for Golden Light. Joo-hak and Macid were now wondering if Jihan was out of his mind. Joo-hak, on the other hand, still held grudges against our MC. He didn't like the fact that they were being treated as his minions. But he was trying to control himself because of one thing: the reward for his secret mission was still increasing. For now, he would let Jihan do everything he wants. Meanwhile, this guy was now heading towards the hordes of zombies. These ones noticed his presence and were now waiting for him. Our MC then prepared his mage skill. A fire appeared on his hand. He then infused this with his divine power skill. Making this kind of spell would increase the firepower and force of this attack. Jihan was now about to cast these blue flames towards the zombies. This attack was spot on. It created this whirl of flames. The zombies started to burn like they were some kind of paper dolls. And while they were still distracted from the flames, our MC equipped his huge sword. He used this to clean up the ones who survived his flames. Jihan pierced right through the ground, creating a huge impact that heated the zombies. This also made the flames scare them even more. Diego and Golden Light were now amazed as they were being carried by a Bronze League support player. This scene was now being broadcasted throughout the battle tube. People were now wondering where this overpowered player came from. Jihan just wiped out 100 or more zombies in that combo. After that, blood zombies also started to attack our MC, but something was wrong. These monsters stopped moving as soon as they came near Jihan. They were even trembling. This guy then smiled. He was expecting this kind of thing to happen. He thought that his new power was really worth it. This right here was the true, authentic value of the space control ability. This skill was called Absolute Territory. It allows the user to have a domain expansion that makes him absolute. While inside this space, anyone who comes into this territory will get their movements and actions limited and controlled. Intense pressure was then felt by these two zombies. This guy was the only one who knew about the true potential of this shapeless power he had acquired. This was because he saw this one firsthand. Baron didn't really care if his secret was being revealed in front of him. This American guy also made Jihan his personal training partner. They would often spar to make themselves stronger. Back to the current time, our MC pulled his sword from the ground. This guy was now considered an absolute being. He could now use mana and divine power simultaneously. On top of that, he already acquired two unique stats, force and martial power. It was then confirmed that this Bronze League was now too small for him. No one could ever stop this guy with a single strike from his huge sword. The number of zombies dying increased so much. Jihan thought that last time he was not able to complete his quest of defeating 1,000 zombies. But right now, he knew that it was possible. The linked quest then came back. This guy was now determined to exceed everyone's expectations. He dashed towards these monsters and performed skillful swordsmanship. No one would ever think that this guy was just a support. He kept increasing his speed and timing. These individuals could only watch in shock as this massacre unfolded before their eyes. The scene was undeniably surreal and bewildering. Jihan's viewers thought that his pledge was something he could live up to. Some of them even tried to gather 200,000 subscribers because they knew it was more impossible for this guy to lose at this point. Golden Light wondered about our MC's status window right now. But one viewer noticed this guy who was just quietly standing at the back. Kim Joo-hyuk had this ominous aura around him. He also revealed his sinister smile. Golden Light was then asked to show their mage on the stream. This guy quickly turned towards Joo-hyuk. He then saw something unusual. Their mage was now standing in front of the crystal and gathering more mana for his fireball skill. Joo-hyuk inhaled and prepared himself for something. He proceeded to bellow at the peak of his voice, invoking the name of Seong Jihan. He addressed him as a person without parents, using strong language to convey his anger and disdain. This statement was heard by Jihan. The people watching the stream were now panicking. They didn't expect the mage to do this. Joo-hyuk exclaimed that Jihan was really getting busy these days, gaslighting his own niece. He claimed that he was the one who was telling Sia to act like that. This stopped Jihan from moving. People also knew that this was just crossing the boundaries. Joo-hyuk kept on talking. He asked Jan what he did to his niece. The viewers saw her calm expression and praised him for having too much patience. But this was not the case. This guy was now radiating with intense hatred. The reason why Joo-hyuk was able to gather enough courage to mess with Jihan was a reward Joo-hyuk could get right now. It was around 55,000 GP. This amount was more than enough to get him back on his feet again. He would also be able to afford the skill he lost last time. RMC stopped his quest just to hear this major speech. He also saw through Joo-hyuk's actions. The main reason why he was doing this was because someone was behind him. He knew that this guy was someone who has no future in life. Jihan thought that Joo-hyuk was already planning to run right after he destroyed this crystal. RMC really didn't mind the insults he was receiving from Joo-hyuk. But this was all different when his niece got included. No one has the right to say anything bad towards Yoon Se-ah. That girl was too innocent and pure for this kind of cheap move. Back when these two met again, RMC remembered something he was already trying to forget. That was the day he lost Sia. Jihan remembered that his niece was already covered with bandages just to hide the scars made by the Sword King family towards her. That day when he held her in his arms, Sia's body gave off no heat. RMC regretted that day ever since. He couldn't do anything to save his precious niece that was dying in front of him. That's also the reason Jihan promised something. He swore on his life that he would never let that thing happen again. This guy has started to emit this huge aura around him. The chat showed that Seong Jihan was already furious. This was also the time when he found out that he could now use the power he was waiting for, the Nameless Divine Arts. Right at this moment, he will make everyone remember that no one could ever mess with Yoon Se-ah. Jihan instinctively imitated this overpowered skill he had in his previous life, but this was more than enough. The moment he tried to combine his three dimensions again, he knew that he would be able to use this power. Jihan got this expression from him right now. Meanwhile, zombies tried to rush towards him, but this guy already felt the electricity below his feet. Jihan made a single tap using his foot, and it made these zombies heat with lightning. RMC just turned himself into a thunderbolt. This was also the same method he used to break the sky. This skill was called Flashing Sky Thundersteps. Meanwhile, these guys are still at the top of their tower. Joo-hyuk's main sponsor donated an additional 100 GP just to notify him that Jihan was already on his way towards their tower. This one smiled as he felt refreshed after talking to Jihan like that, but his attempt on destroying the crystal was stopped. Golden Light tried to come near him, but Joo-hyuk was able to repel him. He told Sparkly that he should not get in his way. Golden Light used this opportunity to ask his viewers to subscribe so he could stop this mage, but it seemed to be not effective. Joo-hyuk was already gathering mana again for his next fireball. This guy was determined to end his quest with this attack. He even had this expression. This guy was too ecstatic because they were about to rank last in this game. His fire skill was then cast towards the crystal. Luckily, a soccer ball appeared, and it was able to absorb the flames. No one really expected this move. Joo-hyuk turned his head to stare at the culprit. Diego Macid has really done a great job defending their crystal. This soccer player then revealed that he was always passionate about his games, and he will block Joo-hyuk's attempt to ruin the game every single time. He also can't let go of the fact that this mage cursed out the member of their team who was busy carrying them all. This made Joo-hyuk furious at him as well. His plan got delayed. The time bought by Golden Light and Diego was enough for the hero to arrive. A lightning struck near Joo-hyuk. These two were now glad that Jihan had descended. Joo-hyuk turned his head around to check what was really happening. Jihan greeted him. He told Joo-hyuk that it seemed like he had a lot to say about him. This one felt the intense pressure from our MC's rage. Hundreds of thoughts were now rushing in his mind. He knew that he already messed up. Joo-hyuk tried to curse Jihan more, but his lips were stopped by something. Our MC just packed this extra. He was now about to show him things that he didn't know existed. Jihan disclosed that he had initially intended to crush this guy from the moment he arrived. However, he had a change of heart and altered his plans. He won't let things end that easily. Our MC was planning to use the mechanics of the battle net against this mage. Pain was usually filtered once a player died inside a game. He knew that Joo-hyuk would just lose some levels if he was about to die here. This was common knowledge for all the players. Jihan then made this one kneel using the pressure of his force. But right now, this guy was about to show Joo-hyuk a world that he was not aware of. Jihan then held this guy on his shoulder. Joo-hyuk thought that even if he was about to die this stage, his level would never go lower, so this move was useless. He thought that making this guy furious was already a win for him. But this satisfaction was about to go away. This mage was now feeling something he can't explain. His body was in a whole different level of pain. Our MC continued to just stare down. He asked Joo-hyuk why he was already in so much pain. This one revealed that he has not started yet. Just remember everyone, never mess with this overpowered MC. Well guys, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, comment part 2 in the comment section. Also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell and like the video. Thank you for watching and see you next time again.